Awesome show today we have with Doctors Garrett Hewstan and Terrie Lewine talking about nonviolent communication. And I absolutely loved having this conversation. It was incredible. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Hi, and welcome. Thank you for joining me. This is Mike Diaz with the Sleeping Yogi Podcast. Super excited because today I have Doctors Garrett Hewstan and Terrie Lewine. Dr. Terrie Lewine is a nonviolent communications coach in Philadelphia. She has a blog you can reach her at. It's getbacktolife.org. And she's trained in chiropractic medicine. We also have Dr. Garrett Hewstan, nonviolent communications coach, and also practicing reorganizational healing chiropractic, and he's based out of San Francisco. How you doing, Garrett? Good to talk to you. Good to connect with you again today.
I'm great. Thank you for asking.
All right. Fabulous. And so tell me, how did you get introduced to nonviolent communication?
Well, Terrie's here, right? Terrie, you there?
I'm here.
So I got introduced to nonviolent communication through Terrie, who was my chiropractor when I lived in Philadelphia. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. And I was so inspired by the care I received from Terrie she was such a holistic practitioner that I was so just impressed with not just her skills, but her beingness, that she introduced me to so many great things. And Terrie, how long have I known you now?
Well, I've been in practice for 20 years in February, and you probably came maybe 1 year in or half a year in. I can't remember. It was when Kate was coming.
Oh, my God, we're getting old.
Very beginning.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So two things that have really happened with me and Terrie. She inspired me to go to chiropractic school, and
I think I tried to talk you out of it, is how I remember.
Yeah. I just finished school about a year ago, and it was really hard for me. And I'm just not a linear thinker, which is kind of where nonviolent communication has made the biggest impact on me. And I'm just, because it teaches you a way to really, Terrie saying that is basically like her saying going to chiropractic school is a strategy. What's the needs underneath of it? And that's the point of nonviolent communication, that you start developing a needs-based consciousness. And so, yeah, Terrie introduced me to NVC, and I would say it's been the biggest eye-opener for me, potentially in my entire life, because I have a moment-by-moment framework of how to really look at any experience at any moment and put it into a framework of needs. And because in the beginning I was like, what is nonviolent communication? Like, don't say F you to people? Okay, I'll try. It sounded so fluffy to me. And then Terrie said it speaks to the intention behind every thought you're thinking. And she said it's the deepest work she had ever done. So for somebody who was my healer on such a huge level, for her to say this is her deepest work, it got my attention in a huge way, and it's exceeded my expectations.
Well, I mean, these are like some huge concepts that we're talking about right now. I mean, my God, just in that first couple minutes, we've talked about holistic medicine, right, or a holistic point of view when it comes to wellness. Linear thinking, which is, I think, would blow a lot of people's minds, just to even touch on that. But also self-awareness, because, who is self-aware nowadays? There's a lot of people that are out there, nowadays that are lacking self-awareness. Would you agree? Is that too general of a statement? I mean, that's why we. That's why we need NVC.
Well, in a way, what happens is that we are taught culturally from babies to track outside of ourselves to get our needs met, right? So we're in the culture that we have now, our parents, as much as they might want to be, are with us as babies, and so we learn very, very early that the cause of my happiness and the cause of my stress is something outside of me, because we're not being seen in a way that we used to. And so it's true when we're kids, like that our wellness and our well-being and our safety and all that is dependent upon someone outside of me taking care of me, who in general in this culture isn't so easily connected to their young people anymore. And But as an adult, as a strategy, it just doesn't really work, and it isn't true anymore as an adult. So we kind of get confused that when you do something that I don't like, that you're the cause. And so NVC, the work, the skill set of it is basically to teach us the understanding is that everything I say and do and every feeling that I have is basically an attempt to get a need met. And if I feel unhappy, I'm longing for something. I'm longing for something that's important to me. In NVC, they use the word need, but I'm just longing for an experience. So if you say something I don't like or do something I don't like, instead of me saying, hey, you shouldn't talk to me that way, I'm like, when I hear you say that, I feel really disappointed because I'm longing for more connection or understanding or whatever that is. Vice versa, we put our happiness on everybody else. They're the greatest thing, and I'm so happy because you're great. And it's like, well, no, when I'm with you, or when you said that to me, when you said that I look so pretty, I feel really happy. My sense of self-care and health is met. I'm really experiencing that right now by what you said, or when you say you like me. So I think we aren't self-aware. We don't know why we say the things we do or do the things we do. And NVC is the cure for that.
And so how does one get involved with NVC? I mean, aside from coaching, because this all seems so new, and it doesn't even seem like it's a simple topic whatsoever, because it really it sounds like it involves ingraining specific behaviors, relearning things, having a deep self-awareness, and really reconnecting with yourself. I mean, how does, rewind it, Michael, going too fast, how does one learn NVC? How does one acquire such a skill?
Is it okay, Garrett, if I speak more?
Hearing you say that, I feel, I would love to hear what you have to say, Terrie.
Okay,
and I'll let you know when you're wrong.
Okay, great.
Oh, I love that.
If there was such a thing. If there was such a thing.
First, I'm going to answer your question, and then we can talk about this idea of right and wrong. The first thing is that there are books, right? There's one book, which is like the book that Marshall Rosenberg. So the work was developed by a man named Marshall Rosenberg, who had passed away a few years ago, and he's one of those people that when he was sick, he grew up in Detroit during the race riots, and when he was 6, he saw the race riots, and he saw his grandmother, tenderly loving people, and like that dichotomy in the world set a 6-year-old off to thinking about how does that even happen. So he's one of those people who I'm just always amazed. Like they start at 6 thinking about those things. Like I wasn't thinking at 6. So he wrote he studied, and his history is on Wikipedia, and he developed this work over time, and he wrote a book called Nonviolent Communication, The Language of Love. Hold on a second.
Yeah. Let's not forget that he went to school to learn to be a psychologist and got his PhD, And what that training was about was how to diagnose people. So part of NVC was him saying, I don't want to diagnose people. Like that was, he didn't just go from A to Z. He went to like the educated mind, you know, the systematic educational system saying, this is how you should hear people by pathologizing them and diagnosing them. So that was part of NVC was him saying, you know, that dehumanizes people.
Right. Well, he had a long journey because he also studied world religions, and he was an academician. He taught in college, and when he was like, I don't know if I'm outing you, but he was like you. He was teaching in a university. I can't remember which one, and he didn't want to give grades, and he knew his job wasn't going to last that long because the people, you know, like the administration said, look, you need to give tests and grades, and he's like, well, what will tests do? He didn't want to test, and they said, well, they'll measure the knowledge, and he's like, well, tests don't measure the knowledge, and so, you know, he didn't last long. So he was how I would
my
say,
hero.
Yeah, he is he was a pretty forward-thinking guy. I mean, it's not all that obvious. It's like really subtle, but the work is so deep. So I do want to just answer your question. You can buy that book. There are videos. There's a couple of one video set and one audio set of CDs. There's a bunch of stuff on YouTube. And then, you know, if you go onto the NVC website, which is the Center for Nonviolent Communication, there's a list, you know, not internationally, of people who are doing practice groups or you know, teaching, coaching, people who are certified, people who are not, all that kind of stuff. So that's the basic way that you can get to NVC, and it is very international. I mean, there's a lot in other countries.
There's practice groups in, I think it's at least 65 countries now.
Wow.
The thing about there's something that you said, Mike, that I want to just pull the thread on a little bit, which was, it seems like you have to learn a whole new thing. And after teaching for so long, I kind of have it that we're taking how we normally think about things and literally, well, maybe almost literally turning it 180 degrees, like the opposite. It's kind of like the opposite of what we've been taught to do. And so people tend to like love it, and you know, like, oh my God, yes, 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 and then it's not so easy to do. So the idea of practice groups and getting together with other people and all that kind of stuff is important, because it sounds wonderful, and everyone kind of, not everyone, but most people like, oh, that just sounds wonderful. Some people think, oh, it's too constricting, which I actually disagree with. But if you're an external and you like to say what's on your mind, say what you think a lot, I've heard from those kind of people, of which I am actually one, that it feels they feel constrained. Oh, I'm not going to be able to yell at people anymore. So anyhow, people have different.
Well, and two, I feel like that's how I would lose out on that. I would lose my ability I'm a loudmouth, you know, by nature. I mean, sometimes I'm a loudmouth, sometimes I'm very quiet, like an ambivert. I think like a chameleon of sorts. Like I'll be flexible with my environment or where I need to be. So I couldn't imagine me being so well reserved and have such a skill set where it would hold back. It might actually do me good, but to hold back everything, you know, and then to bring.
Go ahead.
No. I was going to say to bring needs to the forefront. I don't know.
I don't think it's as much that you're going to be restrained, or whatever that word you just used, as much as, like Terrie once said to me, practicing this work in your life is about having the most intentional life as possible. Like, if yelling at somebody or whatever meets the thing you were exactly intending to do, then it's a win-win, rather than you got what you were going for. But I think often, because I'm a yeller, right, I freaked out on some woman at the dog park a few weeks ago, and it took me I mourned that I yelled at her. It took me days to unravel that. And it was like, I just didn't have, it's kind of hindsight can be 20/20. And it's like, oh, I yelled at her because I was wanting, to protect myself or whatever it was, but that's actually not what happened. And so, I think it's NVC for me after all these years. And all I say about NVC, although I do help people to practice the consciousness of it, I'm a beginner's mind with it every day because it's a practice. So that's all I wanted to say. It's my greatest. What's that there?
I was gonna I thought you were done.
I was just saying for me, NVC is my biggest check and balance.
Yeah, and I would like to say that I would like to distinguish the difference between drama and healthy excitement. I think that a lot of people do drama and they can say anything you want. It's like, you're such a jerk. Don't do this. You're an idiot. Blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and leave me. You never loved me. All those things. What it's hard for people to say is I really care about you and I really wished you cared about me. And it takes all kinds of personal energy and it's not my favorite word, but vulnerability to just say what's so. Is that I'm scared you don't care about me as much as I care about you. And instead of saying that, I'll say anything as being someone who's a little. And so I think that we replace drama with healthy excitement. And so life is not dull. I'm a person who could yell at someone for hours and hours. And my life is not dull now, and I'm grateful that I don't do that anymore because it just backfires. It's just not, if my need was for connection, yelling at someone for hours usually had them calling me less, not more. So that's what I'd like to distinguish.
So then to take that kind of example, the two needs that might be up in the moment are connection and vitality and self-expression. So it's like, yelling at somebody met my need for expression. I'm going to let you know how pissed off I am, and it might even buoy my energy up. It gave me some vitality. So that's the two needs that it did meet, but it did not meet my need for connection. So that's why I say check and balance. It's like, okay, yes, quitting my job met my need for freedom, but now I'm a little worried about my security that the money's not coming in. So if you're constantly putting needs up to look at them versus saying, oh, what, you want me to never yell again, when they hear about the concept of NVC. And, that's what I like about what Terrie just said. I love that distinction between drama and healthy excitement.
I love that too. And does NVC also well, I guess if you have a deep and profound self-awareness, then along with that comes deep and profound listening, does it not? Or active listening, as I've learned over the years. Let's be an active listener. What does that mean? That means sitting pert with your ears wide open, trying to hear a concept come through. Is that correct? That with deep self-awareness also comes the ability to have great thinking, right? Because you have to be very aware.
I'd like to say something, and then Terrie, I would imagine you would expand on it. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So NVC, basically, Marshall Rosenberg would say NVC, first and foremost, he would say empathy before education. So it's like, and I think oftentimes what's happening, and for me, NVC, kind of the real big aha moment is mostly how I speak to myself now. But I'll take the example of two people fighting. When you talk about how important it is to listen to somebody, there's also listening to yourself. So I think often what's happening is two people are charged up about something, and they both want to be heard at the same time. So it's like both people are wanting, an experience of empathy, that the other person understands where they're coming from, but who goes first? You know what I mean? Like, do you draw a straw or so? And Marshall describes empathy as quality of attention, not necessarily intellectual understanding, but can I see the world through your eyes? Even if I see the world differently, can I see it how you see it? So that's I wanted to start with to answer your question, because in my personal life I see that so much, where it's like, wow, both people want to be heard at the same exact time, and nobody's listening because they want to be heard. So I think it's real tough to listen when you're actively freaked out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One
of the deeper things of the work is if there's a quality of listening or a quality of connection or a quality of being heard, right? That's important to me. So what Garrett is saying is we both want to be heard. That need doesn't really, in the deeper, when you're really going deeper, that need can get met whether I'm hearing you or you're hearing me. To be heard, it's not like I need you to hear me. I just need an experience where people are being heard. So one of the things about needs, that they're called universal human needs, and I call them experiences that we want to have. And they don't really, in the beginning when we're trying to teach this stuff, it often sounds like it's going one way or the other way, right? Either I want, like you're not meeting my needs. And needs are sort of this, they're like a plasma that we're walking through. It's not, they don't go one way or the other. Marshall used to say, you're in the consciousness when you don't know if you're giving or receiving. And so I can have my need to be heard met by listening to you. And it's one of the hardest things of doing this work is distinguishing the difference between the need, the experience that I want to have, and attaching you to it. So I have a need to be heard, but I don't have a need for you to listen to me. My need to get heard for being heard or to be heard can get met in a wide variety of ways. And so one of the tasks, one of the skills is to pull that apart, pull those two things apart. The need itself, the universal human need for love or compassion, and the idea that you need to come home at 9 o'clock so that I can have an experience of care or consideration. And so people and strategies are not attached to these needs, but generally in the world, that's a very hard thing to separate out. So most people, when they fight, we don't know what the needs are at all, or when they disagree, and then we just argue strategy. You need to come home. No, you need to come out. No, you can't have that friend over, and nobody knows. We know we're upset. We just don't know why. And so when we can dive in and say, yes, I really want to care. Well, I do care about you. So once you're talking about what needs are at stake or the cause of the feelings of distress that I'm having, then there's really no compromise. At that level, all the needs can get met, right? It just may look very different than how we're all what we're talking about, the way that I'll have it met.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pause there for a second.
Well, and I mean, so then it kind of goes deeper. I feel like we all need NVC, right? All humans, because this is something everyone could benefit from. But who has the most to gain from NVC? I mean, it sounds like relationships, right? Like relationships. So that'd be like spouses would be a good one, like spousal relationships, learning NVC. Parents, building that communication bridge between parent and child, right? And even corporations could greatly benefit from manager, subordinate, building those skills, right?
Mm-hmm. I'll say one thing about that.
Yes.
Nobody needs NVC.
Oh, I love that. Okay, mystery man. Take us down the rabbit hole.
Terrie said that to me years ago. It's like, really there's no such thing as NVC. It's like if what you're doing in your life is getting you what the life you want and the experiences you want, then whatever you're doing is working for your intention. NVC are just some skill. Like I'm just putting that in there a little bit to be a little bit pedantic when you say everyone needs NVC. It's like, I think people would benefit with practicing an NVC consciousness, which is a needs-based consciousness. But it's like, I mean, that for me, that begets the question, how many people do I know that really are having, energy-rich lives, and they're thriving, and their intentions are being realized? It's probably in the lower percentile. So I would say most people could greatly benefit from NVC and from detangling out what they think NVC is. For me, that's almost half of it. People come to and you and I talked about this last time, Mike. It's like people, I ran the NVC club in chiropractic school for, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years. And it was so funny. Some of the people it was a pretty popular club, but some of the people who never came, you would hear through the grapevine what they thought it was. And it was like, oh, that's so funny. Like, oh, you mean if somebody rapes me, I'm not supposed to feel, and they go to these extreme examples to try to, what would the word be? To try to challenge you, that basically in a way to try to say what Terrie said a few minutes ago was, are you outsourcing your well-being no matter what happened to you? When do you take your power back? I could say it in a few different ways, but, when do you take your world, your inner world back? So that's how I would describe NVC. I think it can help people really come back to their sense of values and what's important to them. And that I do think most people need.
What I might say about that, do you want to hear more?
Of course, absolutely.
We're done now.
Pink, please. I know, cut her off. We'll just edit her out later. Let's edit her out.
That's a drag. I'm hanging on every word, basically.
I lost my train of thought, but is that...
Garrett had just talked about what's at stake, outsourcing your world and reclaiming your power.
Thank you.
And,
what I would like to add to that is that in NVC, there's a couple assumptions. One is that I'm 100% responsible for the feelings I have. My needs are the cause of my feelings, not what you did. What you did
whoa, slow back. Rewind it. That was huge. I am 100% responsible
for my feelings, and so are you.
Okay. And so
that's also an agreement.
So you're what?
That's also, to practice this consciousness, you have to agree to that. You have to bring that to your conscious mind, like, oh, do I want to be responsible?
Well, I think we actually just exist as responsible. How I do it in the world is a whole different thing. But the fact is that
I guess that's what I mean.
Is right. So that I am, and again, others don't necessarily have to quote unquote do NVC in order for me to have an enriching relationship. I mean, I had it. I think it enriches lots of relationships where one person, let's say it's a parent, and they're never gonna do that crazy stuff, and they're never going to really listen to you in a way that feels good to you. But there's a lot of connection that can be had if I were to start being responsible for the feelings I have when I'm around my mother or my dad or whoever it is. But so there's so much to say. So I'll just finish that one. The one is that, I'm 100% responsible, and so are you. And then people get a little nervous. It's like, oh, then I can just say whatever I want. It's like the thing that's different about this body of work is that I care about your needs. Like, to be in the consciousness of NVC, I am agreeing that I actually care about your needs being met. I'm never responsible to meet them, to do something, but I care. And so then we would navigate and negotiate like, oh, from a needs-based perspective, this is what's important to you, this is what's important to me. What is it that we could do right now or soon or whenever that would get all of our needs met? And me, I have yet to have an experience where that does not. There's just no way. There's always a way, and so that's one piece. So that we're both responsible, but we are agreeing that we care. Now, let's say you're in a relationship where whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be a deep relationship, but somebody actually just doesn't care. Well, then still, there's nothing wrong with it. They don't have to. They're not required to. It's up to me. This is the piece where, and people think NVC, because it's also called compassionate communication, they think it's all light and fluffy. And here, it's, in my opinion, it's the opposite, because I'm going to say what's so, and bear what comes back to me. Like, I'm not going to lie to you or be nice. I think what most people do is either they're very nice and don't say anything, and then they hold it in or whatever, and then they get mean. And so both of them are a story. Oh, I better not say it because you'll die. Or, you know what, you really are such a jerk, and you've been a jerk all these years, and blah, blah, blah. And really, it's just about saying what's so now and really being willing to bear how I feel about how you feel about what I just said. So that's kind of deep, but that's kind of how it goes. Often we don't say stuff because we can't bear our own feelings, not because of what you feel. It's not like because I can't handle that you're sad. I can't handle how I'm going to feel if you're sad based on something I said. And that's why we usually don't say the truth. And so in NVC, we're kind of required to say the truth, but in a context and in a way that we think will meet everybody's needs, not just my own, in general, barring physical, I'm not going to, there is a thing called protective use of force and practical use of force, but so, I'm not going to say, hey, go out, go talk to the guy who's beating you up, just go talk to him some more about what his needs are. No, you stop the action. And then instead of punishing him, you sort of try to teach a better way for him to get his needs met, or her, whatever it is. So I hope that was clear. I hope that was clear.
No, you know what? It was, in fact, far too foggy. We're going to have to edit it all out. Garrett, let's edit her out. The whole track, the whole bit and lot. She doesn't deserve any airtime.
She tried. She tried her best.
It was a valiant effort, really, darling, but we'll just have to edit you out from here on out. Now, but it's absolutely right, and it actually makes me link in that component where it goes into, what did we say earlier, that there's a neurological component, and I think that neurological component comes from not understanding our own feelings. Is that an incorrect assessment? Or an incorrect interpretation, and
it's deeper
this is what
than
I
that.
mean by that.
It's
I can't wait. Okay.
Well, to say that we don't understand our feelings, I will do a hair of science here. Most people agree that your cortex, right, your frontal lobe, where we reason, right? Maybe I shouldn't go to work drunk. Where you're looking at your choices. That part of your brain doesn't get developed until you're, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. So it's almost like, so then there's the concept of hardwiring. What really hardwired you was not in your conscious mind. That's the whole point of hardwiring. Donald Trump kids from 0 to 6, they didn't get it hardwired into them that, like, oh man, we're going to eat, whatever, like macaroni and cheese every day. Like what got hardwired into them was like a bit of, I imagine, this might not be true, but like an ease around money. What might have gotten hardwired into other people was like, wow, money's a struggle, man. I watched my parents. It's not a conscious thought. It's something that's just the way it is. It's your filter of the world. So this is about bringing it to your conscious mind, but it's just, I just wanted to say how it got set up. That's why it just lives for you like the truth. Like, they're Republican, they're an asshole, or they're a Democrat, they're a libtard, or whatever they're saying now. It's like, that reaction is so deep that it's not in their conscious mind. That's how I think the neurology plays into it. It's just like, two things that set you up for two ways to learn something is repetition and emotional intensity. So, we had a lot of that, a lot of repetition and a lot of emotional intensity as kids, and that's why we pull people. That's why my friend Molly pulled the person into relationship with her who eventually murdered her. She didn't pull the person into relationship with her that would never even in a million years think of putting his hands on her. So there's something in her that kind of pulled that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's something deep, deep, deep in her that just kind of hooked into what was deep, deep, deep in him. And, you know, it turned out to be a pretty dysfunctional, unhealthy, I've heard it called wound bonding, trauma bonding. Oh. So it's like, okay, how do I, and then Terrie mentioned this a minute ago, it was like teasing out the difference between what does right and wrong really mean, you know? It's like, because it lives so, we want to be right because if not, I don't know, it has something to do with like our sense of self. Even if our sense of self is, you know, kind of an unhealthy sense of self where we're fighting all the time, it still is something we will protect because it's so deep and it's so old, we don't even know what it is.
Well, I think it has safety, actually. Mm-hmm. So we need to be right or wrong. We need to be able to assess accurately whether we're in danger, right, evolutionarily, right? And I think that sort of, we've kind of morphed it. We're not so much in danger that much anymore, and so there is no getting it right or wrong when it comes to the emotional world or the thought world, you know. So we've kind of moved it over into this world where there is no right or wrong, and we just call it right or wrong. The other piece of that is because we are pack animals, you know, we're really wired to want to fit into the pack and to be able to contribute to the pack and also give information to the pack, right? And so in the dominator culture, so the way that it works is I know I need to fit into my pack, and we have an authority figure, and so I want that authority figure to see me, and like if I get out of line, if I do something that they don't like, I get punished, and then I do the thing that's right, or I end up getting kicked out of the pack. That's what we do now. That's sort of the culture that we're in. We're in our pack. There's somebody with authority. They tell us what we did was wrong. We shape up, fly right, and now we get to be a part of the pack, and now I'm safe again. In NVC, the whole idea is that so the intention is basically the same. We all want to be a part of the pack. So it's just a skill set that most people have learned in this dominator culture, which we don't have to really go into all of that. But in the NVC, in the compassionate communication world, it's like the way that we would fit back into the pack is the whole pack would say, hey, we would all sort of take responsibility for, you know, and have a curious perspective. How is it that you thought that was going to contribute to the pack? You know, this thing that you did, rather than punish you and insist that you, there's an invitation back in, I'll say it that way, rather than you know, if you don't straighten up and fly right, you're out. And that means death to any kind of human. So mixed in with how we think about things in this culture, because it's not all that obvious that we are A, a pack, and B, that we need each other. We're both autonomous and interdependent all at the same time. But it's not all that obvious anymore. And so in this culture, it's hard to see why I might get upset when someone doesn't ask me to go to lunch, and I get super upset. But it's literally because my neurology says I'm going to die because I'm not part of this pack. And if you're not part of the pack evolutionarily, you would die. Or when you're a kid, baby, that's how you get hardwired. I can't when I'm, 1 year old, go into the refrigerator and make spaghetti for dinner.
So God, that 1 year old has quite an evolved palate. Oh no, but it makes absolute sense. And it's actually quite profound. And I absolutely love it. But then questions come about like consciousness, right? So then it's really NVCs between two people. It could be NVC between multiple people, right? Because we're talking about packs now. We're talking about, first it was relationships, and then now we're talking pack and how you all sort of fit into this, to societal norms or programming. And I know this is the wrong language, but I'm just trying to find the words myself.
There is no wrong, Mike. You could never, even if you tried.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, because last time I said should, and Garrett, I mean, my God, practically jumped through the phone. You should have heard the shriek, you just should it all over yourself, and I
queened out all over him.
Yeah, I couldn't believe, how bad it is to should. I should it all over myself. I admit it now.
God, I was trying to make that point subtle.
Yeah.
My intention didn't come through there.
I should it all over and I haven't should it since. I tell you what, I've been to Should It Anonymous, and they've taught me the ways. But no, it's very profound. It truly is profound, this body of work. And that's why it's like more people need to know about it, and they need to know how to get more involved and applying it in their lives, Oh,
I appreciate you for saying that, because that's my this is, I have a partner named Steve, and he also teaches NVC in Asheville, and we're, I don't know if you know anything about astrology, but we're going into our third, well, he's in it, and I'm entering into my third Saturn cycle. So it's like the third of our life, like we're turning 60, and it's like, okay, in the next 30 years, what are we going to do? What's our life going to be like? And we've agreed to do a few things, and we started this thing called the 10,000 Love Letters Project, and we're going to write our own and encourage others to write 10,000 love letters in the next 29 years, and then give away this thing called the Thanksgiving Address booklet. And then we're going to also teach, either us or one person from us, teach 10,000 people NVC in the next 29 years, because we just think it's sort of it's like such a salve. Like when you really deeply sit in it, it's just such a salve for what's happening now. Like if we could all just sort of quiet down and care about each other and just slow down and listen and talk. And I think it's just going to take a long time, but 500 to 1,000 years. But it's work worth, in my opinion, it's my deepest work. I'll just say it that way. And when someone says they like it, I feel happy.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And I think so many people, because again, we're talking about huge things here. We're talking about self-awareness. We're talking about getting your needs met, emotional intelligence. We're talking about some really huge concepts that I think a lot of people would just scoff off and say, oh, New Age, or oh, what nonsense all that sounds like. And it's actually no. In order to get, or to, see, and this is where I'm trying to catch myself too with my words and what it is that I'm saying. But I would say in order to meet the need of having happiness in your life, you need to have the profound self-awareness of what brings you happiness. Otherwise, like you said, you could be upset and battling with somebody about something that has absolutely nothing to do with what it is that's going on in your life at the current moment, the present moment, but because you failed to meet a need in the past or something wasn't resolved, you kind of go apeshit in a way. You act crazy with people because there's a lack of self-awareness. And that's just, again, very overgeneralizing and simplifying, oh my gosh, and simplifying our conversation. But it's incredible.
Well, Mike,
it's powerful.
Mike, I wouldn't say people act crazy. Again, this is just a little bit, just to kind of get a little bit of the consciousness in there. To me, because I've seen some behavior from just different people in my life, from me, it's like they're not acting crazy. It's more like, the way I would say it is, they're acting logical based on their worldview.
Ah, I see.
Tragic ways to get their needs met.
Say it again?
They have tragic ways to get their needs met.
Right, if they even get them met.
I'm going to get that tattooed on me.
Meaning that's why it's tragic. They're not getting them met. But they don't know that.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's kind of like Marshall uses, it's funny, you know, here's a guy with a PhD who's developed this, what I think is this great thing, and he's using puppets to teach. He'll put hand puppets on, one is a jackal and one is a giraffe. The giraffe only hears feelings and needs, and the jackal, you know, blames and diagnoses and makes other people responsible for their experience. And he would say a second ago when you said, the crazy thing, like, so a jackal would say, you're being crazy, or speaking to yourself, God, I'm so crazy. And it's like, well, no, it's like, the giraffe way to look at it is like, slow down enough to say, what did they actually, say it again, sir?
Well, it depends. If you're saying it to someone else, it's like, wow, something's really important to you, and I'm not getting what it is by what you're saying, so could you tell me a little more? Or vice versa. Wow, the level of distress that I have, something is really important to me. Like, that's the interrupt for, you know, she's crazy or I'm crazy. It's like, wow, what's so important to me? And that would be, you know, some kind of experience that you're hoping for. Something super important. Like, to me, going off over the edge and being really, quote-unquote, crazy is just a barometer of how important something is.
Yeah,
so
and I think,
like a crazy person, I would just say, listen, tell me more. I'm not getting what about that is important to you. I can't, from what you're saying.
When I hear that, what comes up for me is I think of, like, you know, whether it's a corporation or a couple, it's always just usually one-on-one. You know, you're always pretty much just talking to one other person. And I think when somebody has the experience that somebody's thinking that somebody's being crazy, I think the person that's listening to the quote-unquote crazy person is trying to speak to their choice. It's like, look, I have a choice here. Just because you're screaming at me or you're upset doesn't mean that I don't get to make a choice here, because that's thematic in a lot of people I've been working with lately. It's like the other person is trying to convince them basically that their needs are more important than the other person's needs. I'm upset, therefore you should do what I want you to do right now. And the other person is kind of like, actually, I have a choice, you know, but they don't, you know, none of it's really being, unless you have a lot of skill, that's being played out in ways that aren't working for either. You know what I mean? It's like one person's screaming, the other person's either going to, what do they say, give up or give in. Okay, I'll do it, when they really don't want to do it.
Well, here's the thing I would encourage for having been in customer service. It's like you may not get exactly what you want, but we do care. I mean, we may not be able to, we may not, do they sell everything? Like, so we may not be able to get you a pillow. I don't know what they sell there, but we do, you know, what I'm getting is that your life is hard.
We may not be able to retrieve your soul.
I did want to say something about something you said, about the, like, when one, maybe it's piggybacking on what Garrett said also, is that what happens often with people is you're upset, I'm in a relationship with you, and you're upset, and you're consistently upset with something that I do, you know, whatever, my job or the way I talk or something. And
I keep your best friend.
Oh.
Well, something like that, but that, you know, well, even that one, and it's like, well, I want you to stop, and it's like, you know, you're wrong for stopping, and this is where that right-wrong comes in terms of, I don't think there is a right-wrong, but even if there was, people do things that are wrong all the time, and this is where it's sort of, where NVC, I think often, this piece of being strong doesn't get talked about enough. It's like, I'll die for your right to sleep with my best friend if that's what brings you joy. And I will die for my right to not be in a relationship with you that's partnership or where honesty's and you know what I mean? It's like what we do is we stay in a relationship for years and years and years trying to get that person to change and see it my way or do it my way, when it's like, you know what, we might not be going, you know, we might be great as friends or we might be great as business partners, but we are not, shouldn't be living together in a house, because whatever you like, you know, green and I like red and whatever it is. And so, but we are not willing, instead of just like getting our needs met for creativity and you know, being heard, we just argue this thing. Well, we have to live together because we're married, and that's what married people do. And you know, but how you keep your house is very different than how I want to keep my house, and so we're just going to argue for years and years rather than come up with a new solution that meets everybody's needs. That might be my newest thing that I do in all my classes and practice groups now is, okay, when you get to the needs, I want a list of 12 solutions, 12 requests, 12 ways, 12 strategies that would meet all those needs. Even ones that you don't think you would ever do, write them down because they are, and then you get to pick one. So there's this way that we never take responsibility for meeting my own needs. It is up to me. I get to ask you, hey, you know, will you sweep the floor on, you know, after you use the chop saw? And you get to say, I'm never going to sweep the floor ever. And it's like, well, I can't live in sawdust. And it's like, okay, but we really care about each other, so let's have separate homes. And we'll see each other on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday.
Right, because you need to get your needs met, right? And
we're so attached to our strategy versus getting the need met. So I'm just going to yell at you for 4 years to clean up something that you don't ever want to clean up. You don't care about it. I do.
So I would take this back.
Go ahead.
I would take this back to before, when Mike says everybody needs NVC. It's like, why I think NVC is so important to teach and to practice is because, Terrie, as you're giving all these different examples, the word that keeps coming to my mind is like, you're being resourceful, as opposed to, my back's up against the wall, I've been taught that you're an asshole from every television show and movie where, you know, everybody gets their friends to agree with them that their boyfriend or their girlfriend's a jerk. And it's like, that's the way, that's what I mean by we've been taught. It gets reinforced all the time. And when I hear you saying, oh, you don't want to clean up he has the guts to say, I don't want to clean up I don't want to clean up I don't want to sweep. And you're like, well, I don't want to live with, and it's just like, maybe we can live apart and see each other. That to me is like, I take such a deep breath. It's like, wow, you mean we have options? We can be, like Donnie Epstein says, that's the art of resourcefulness. Like, we can just kind of be resourceful people inside of our thinking. Like, that's so revolutionary. That's like, what are you talking about? He's a jerk. He should clean up the goddamn sawdust. What are you nuts? Like, and it's just, we enforce it upon each other. And agreement is deadly in this culture, because you will get people to agree with you, and it will do nothing but make you miserable, because it won't help you get your needs met. You'll just be quote unquote right. Like, what's that saying? You can either be right or you can be happy, but you can't be both. It's like, okay, you're right. He's a jerk for your best friend. You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. And so what? Are you happy? Are you getting what you need?
Right and happy?
What?
You don't think it's possible to be right and happy? Like, just by casual circumstance, it could happen that you're right and happy?
I think you're kidding.
I'm not kidding. I think you could be right and happy. Anyhow, that's just quote. I could see where you could be right or happy, but I think you can be both.
Well, I don't think right exists.
Uh-huh.
But I love where we're going with this, because this is huge, because what you're basically saying is, rather than, because you're right, agreements can be deadly in life, and in this country. And so most people, like you say, they, A plus B equals C, or 1 plus 1 equals 2 or whatever. They go through some sort of recipe, and they're like, well, I'm just trying to follow the recipe for life. And it's like, well, if you agree to that recipe, then that's all you're going to get. It's no different from you deserve what you settle for. Because, if I give you a recipe and then you decide you're going to add pepper and garlic and cayenne pepper because you want more spice in it, then all of a sudden you've created a whole new recipe and you've infused your own flavors, literally, into this recipe for life. And did I just hear you correctly? Is that what you're telling me that we can achieve with NVC? Because you don't need to just settle. It's about identifying your needs and getting your needs, and at the same time being resourceful with your needs too, curating your life, living your best life, as I like to say.
Yeah.
I would say that, but I would also say, and caring about others. Like, everybody's needs matter, and that's a piece that it's both. It's like, when you're negotiating, it's like, how can this work for us? So yes, I could get my needs met, and that's true. And the bigger consciousness of it is like everybody can get their needs met.
With a caveat. I care about your needs. I care about your needs, and I think what Terrie's saying is, let the person know you care. But for me, it's like the caveat is I do care about your needs, and I'm actually not responsible for them. But I care. But I'm not, because I think that's where we collapse it. Well, if you care, then do something about it. It's like, I actually don't have to.
Well, I would say it a little bit differently than you. I would say,
you're wrong.
Well, I would just say that I do care, and I actually want your needs to get met, and I will sit here and work with you to get them met. It just may not look like the way that you're asking me to. So if you're saying, oh, you have to come home at 9, or I can never be happy, or I can never make it mean you love me, and it's like, well, I do love you, and I work till 10. So, how is it that your need for love can get met and my need for freedom can also get met? And it's like, that is important. It's like the strategy that you have, which is me being home at 9, or me going to bed at the same time as you. I mean, that's a funny thing that people sometimes say. It's like, what? Anyhow, the point is, if that's the only way I can prove to you or show you, or you can have the experience of love, then there's all kinds of things with that. If I'm dependent on you doing this one thing, it's like gets very, very, very small, and I'm going to really watch you. But if I understand, if I pull you apart from the need, and I can invite you to, do these things, and it's like, well, I care, and let's come up with 10 ways that I can really do things that are totally within my value system and possible for me to do, and that will indicate to you that it will totally give you the experience of love. It's just not going to be me coming home at 9. Like, that's how I see it. It's not like, right. Oh, I just don't have to do anything. I actually do care, and I actually want to have the conversation.
Yeah. I think the other part of that is what I'm trying to say is gauging somebody's willingness. Like, are you willing to negotiate with me? Are you willing to kind of be flexible? Because I think sometimes, and I think it's just because I've had so many examples lately of people, not necessarily personally, but I've heard like friends and different people, it's like the person they're with is actually not willing. They're like, no, I'm not going to do anything different. You're cool. And it's like, that's when I would say, hey, I do care about your needs, but I want to let you know I'm not responsible for them because I'm not getting anything back that's looking like negotiating or willingness to hear me. So at some point you have to say, I did my best with this person, and they're just not coming back at me with any kind of willingness.
Well, it's again, and then it's like sort of what is right there. If they're not, then it's like, how do we change this relationship in order to make it the best that it can be. And sometimes it's about
they just wait till the other person is over being mad, and then they try to act like everything's okay again. And then the other person gets mad about 2 weeks later, and then he gets scared.
But that person is not being responsible for their own needs, right? So again, it's equal. So my needs equal to the other person's needs. And if I'm not willing to meet my own needs, then I blame you because, whatever, you get mad at me every 2 weeks. It's like, okay, listen, I actually don't want to be in a conversation like this with someone who says they care about me, so I'm going to opt for something else. Again, it's both equal. So, again, I think what I'm hearing you say is that person blames the person who keeps getting mad over and over because they're not willing to negotiate, but it's like, okay, then choose something else.
Right. How did you contribute it?
Don't do. They just keep blaming the crazy person, or the one who doesn't want to negotiate. And it's like, you know what, if you don't want to negotiate, then I would like to change the level of relating that we do.
Right.
And that's tough because there's often a huge cost to that. It's so easy, Mike, to talk about this stuff like this. Oh, well, you just do this and you just say goodbye, or and it's always messy. And the real deep work here is to not care about the person's needs, so to continue to care about the person's needs and go slow and just remember my own needs, not my strategies, and then respond to what happens moment by moment by moment. That's all there is. And it doesn't mean that I'm happy all the time, right? That's not what it is. It's just that I'm not necessarily fighting. Just because we can be not in agreement and never fight. You know what I mean? We don't have to fight just because you like chocolate and I like vanilla. But what happens is you're insisting that I eat chocolate. And it's like, so what the work really is, which I think is, because we talk about it, it seems so static. I'm going to say this, I'm going to meet my need, and it's not. It's just, you say this to me right now, how do I feel, what's important to me, and what do I want to say or do? Like, what do I want to do about it? And that's it, over and over, and it's that capacity that is what I think NVC is. It's not, it's like, respond to this. This is what just got said. This is where I am. Someone just ran over my foot. Or someone just gave me flowers. Or so. What is it that? How do I feel? What happened? How do I feel? What's causing my feelings? The need, and what do I want to say or do in this minute about that? And that's it. And doing that over and over and over again. It's not really what I think people think. It gets confusing. Is that they're going to get what they want. And it's not they're going to get their needs met. So I might get my needs met for love by calling Garrett and saying, listen, will you tell me 12 ways you care about me? Not with my partner who just yelled at me. And it's really about thinking of all the ways I can get my needs for love met, or my needs for compassion met, or to be heard, or whatever it is. There's a big long list. It's what we do is we get stuck in our strategy and we forget everything else. We're not really responding with care and strength and honesty in every moment. And that's what, to me, NVC is.
Oh my God! Well, that is extremely powerful. My God, I mean, it literally took my breath away. And with that, let's close. Somebody start the credits, please. Can we get the end outro? And we'll wrap today, and we'll bring this on next time. I mean, that was beautiful. Well said. My God, extremely powerful.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you for having this conversation and for your tone of voice and for your seeming enthusiasm and and just putting it all together. And I'm really grateful for any minute I can talk or practice NVC. I'm super grateful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you too, Terrie. I mean, that was I was honestly like you shook my chest. It was like just gripped. I love it. And Garrett, love, any final words? Any final words?
I'm kind of celebrating the coming together of us three on this podcast. And I also just in this moment, I'm having kind of like a sadness, like a mourning of like, wow, it's like, it's so ingrained in our culture and in our minds, not this. And I'm just like, there's a lot of, sometimes I just think, wow, it's a good idea. All I know is practicing NVC has actually made my moments better. And I just hope people can experience the relief I have by practicing this consciousness, because that's the thing that buoys me up. Like, it is possible to get some relief, and in this moment, I think I'm just tapping into. I know how much suffering is going on for people. It brings that up for me. It's like, it's not all just rainbows. It's like there's real. There's just so many challenges out there for people, and I just hope that they can get some relief however they can find it.
And I love that. And I think, perhaps we could set an intention for the next time that we all work together, that we could come up with ways to strategize, ways to attract this work. Because I think a lot of people in the world have forgotten that they are loved, that they are worthy of love, that they're worthy of being cared for, that they're worthy of receiving goodness in their life, because oftentimes people hear a message that says otherwise, and that message is not true, by the way. I mean, you are all worthy, you are all loved, and that's, I wake up every morning, and that's the first thought that I get. I say, God, thank you for letting me open my eyes, and I feel loved, and I love you. And that's like the first thing. As soon as I open my eyes, I'm like, oh shit, here we are. It's the video game's starting again. Let's get to it. But first off, thank you, God, for this, for letting me open my eyes. And I love you, and thank you for showing me this love. And it's true. Like, when we find that self-love, and when we realize that we are worthy, then we can carry on with our day. And that's what I live with. And I feel like that's what this can teach people. NVC could teach people about their self-worth, getting their needs met, but also instilling kindness and love back into the world, right? Because we're, I think, also taught as a culture to take, constantly take. The message you may hear quite often is, I got to have money, got to have this, got to do this, got to blah, 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 got to be somebody, got to do this, blah, 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 got to be glamorous, got to wear makeup. And it's like all these crazy messages that you do not have to listen to. You can be unique. You can be your own person. You can be whoever you wish to be. You don't have to be glamorous. You don't have to fit a mold. You can be whoever you are. Just be you. And that's what I love in my work, to teach authenticity, to be just yourself. That's it. And to feel safe in that. And so, thank you both for being here. Thank you both for this beautiful conversation. And the reason why we've already been, I think it's been an hour and it's incredible, the stuff that we talk about. But the next conversation, yes, let's dive into the strategies of what it is, that how this work could, we'll come up with
how to have compassion for yourself and compassion for other people in a way that's actually, felt by you and by them. The way I think about myself, or the way I rethink something, if I think about myself in one way, I feel crappy, and if I think about myself in another way, it's like, I literally melt. So I think that would be what I would want to do in the future with you guys, is to really come up with ways to help people look at themselves with giraffe eyes and giraffe ears, to really have that self-compassion and that self-empathy, because that's the biggest hands-on skill I've learned from NVC is how to give that to myself, first and foremost.
I love that. Yeah, I love that, and I agree. Let's do that. Let's bring the puppets too. You got to have the puppets along.
Maybe we'll do exercises.
Yes, I love that. That would be so cool, and I can't wait for it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Guys.
And with that, we're going to wrap up. This is the Sleeping Yogi Podcast. Until next time.